These are real 911 calls, disturbing, mysterious, and true. Each story will send chills down your spine and slowly drift you into sleep. This story is completely free. We don't put any ads, which means we don't earn anything from these videos. All we ask is one small favor. Please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. It's free for you, but it gives us the motivation to keep making more real police stories every night. Also, tell us in the comments which city are you watching from and what time is it right now. We love reading your messages. Now, let's begin the story. Story number 1. I've been a deputy in a Midwestern county for long enough to recognize the cadence of the radio in my bones. It was a Wednesday, late winter. After midnight, the cold that makes your breath feel like it freezes before it leaves your mouth. I just cleared a traffic complaint out on County Road 8 when dispatch keyed up. Lincoln 12, open line 911 from a landline. Possible disturbance. 1, 2, 5, 4, 7. Old Mill Road. Caller disconnected. No answer on callback. Open line means you can hear something, but not words. Sometimes it's a TV, sometimes it's just silence. Sometimes it's worse. I acknowledge, spin my unit, and take the long 2-lane down through trees that lean in like they're listening. Old Mill is a gravel spit off the highway. 3 houses on it all told. One burned out and empty since before I joined. The address in CAD belonged to the middle one, a Victorian with too much roof and not enough money in it. I'd been out there once for a welfare check on an older gentleman the neighbors hadn't seen for days. He'd moved to assisted living. House stayed empty. I told dispatch I was en route. Asked for a second unit if one cleared. Night like that, everyone's tied up on drunk drivers and domestics. Copy 12, dispatch said. No units available. Be advised, we have multiple hang-ups from the same line. Open line, faint audio. It sounds like a ringtone. Unknown source. Ringtone? I say. From a landline? Affirm. It's odd. I let it hang. I've learned not to make jokes on the radio when the hairs on the back of your neck are already listening. When I turned off onto Old Mill, my headlights threw the house up in pieces, peeling white paint, dark windows, a porch with a swing that moved 2 inches and stopped. Gravel crunched under my tires like it was too loud. I shut the engine, clicked the overheads off, and for a second the world got real quiet. You don't realize how much noise your car makes until it stops. County Lincoln 12, show me on scene, I said. No vehicular traffic. House appears dark. Copy 12. I sat still in the driver's seat for a minute, just listening. You learn that trick from older guys, the silence before you move. Somewhere a dog barked and immediately changed its mind. Then I opened the door and the cold slapped me in the face. The front path was soft with old leaves and a dusting of frost that made everything look new. The porch boards creaked like they were deciding if they could hold me. The door was closed. No visible damage. I knocked with the hard part of my flashlight and called out, Sheriff's Office, 911. If someone called for help, come to the door. Nothing. I knocked again, louder, waited. In that space between knocks, a sound climbed up out of the house. At first I thought it was wind, or a pipe. Then my brain saw it for what it was. A faint ringing, not a cell phone chirp, not a doorbell. The mechanical, metallic, memory-sharp ring of an old phone. I keyed my shoulder mic. County? I'm hearing a ringtone inside the residence. Can you advise status on the 911 line? Affirmative 12. We're getting an open line from that number now. It just started again. I copy. I tried the doorknob. It turned with that sticky wooden protest old houses have. County, door is unlocked. I'm making entry for welfare check. 3,4. Timestamp, Lee 314. I angled my body cam on instinct and stepped inside. The air was colder than outside. The smell of old paper and a kind of sweet dust. I waited just past the threshold, took a slow breath, and called out again. Sheriff's Office? If you can hear me, call out. The ring came again, from deeper in. Not steady, the kind that rings once, waits, rings again, like something's deciding whether to pick up. I moved slowly through the front room. My flashlight cone slid over a couch under a white sheet, a bookshelf of sagging spines, a leaning floor lamp with no bulb. The floor had an even coat of dust except where footsteps had made paths some time ago. Delivery, realtor, maybe. I put my boot down edge first, out of habit, so I could track my own path later. The ring drew me to a hallway and up a set of stairs that protested like they'd been asleep a long time. On the landing, the air tasted like cold metal. Doors on both sides, all closed except one at the end. The ring floated out from there. I paused at each door, listened. Nothing. At the open one, I stood in the doorway and ran the light across. It was a bedroom, or had been. Wallpaper flowers faded to ghosts. A bare mattress with an old quilt folded on top. On the wall by the door, like a relic, a rotary phone mounted in a wooden cradle. The phone was wrong. It was tidy, polished, like someone wiped it down in the last hour. No dust on it at all. The ring came from it again, and I watched the metal piece tremble. There was a cord, coiled and soft, running down the wall to a jack near the baseboard. The jack hung crooked, and the cord didn't go into it. It ended 3 inches short. The plug was clean and new, like it had never been used. "County," I said into my mic, voice quieter than I expected. "I'm upstairs. There's an old rotary phone ringing, but it's not connected to anything. A beat. 12. Be advised, we still have an open line. It sounds like ringing on our end too. We're trying to record. Do you have any other indications of someone inside?" "Negative. No movement, no voices. Doors appear secured. Stand by." I stepped closer to the phone. The ring stopped before I touched it. That silence had weight. I lifted the receiver slowly. It felt heavy and colder than the room. I put it to my ear, expecting nothing. At first there was nothing. No dial tone, just the house. Then, soft, like a recorder turned low, I heard my own voice. "Sheriff's office. If someone called for help, come to the door." The sound of my knock echoed in that tiny speaker, like it had been replayed from far away. I stood very still and listened to myself call out again, farther away, a few seconds behind me. After that, a scuff. The door opening the noises I had just made, stepping inside. The tiny echo carried them back to me. My throat went dry in a very simple human way. I lowered the receiver and looked at it like it might explain itself. My radio popped. "Lincoln 12. We just got a whisper on the 911 line. Female voice, possibly older. Couldn't make it out." Then the line went dead. "Copy," I said, and my mouth was ahead of my brain. "Can you replay it?" "Negative for now. CAD shows recording, but the audio's not populating." "Do you require another unit?" "Affirmative. Start me whatever clears nearest. I'll continue the check." I put the receiver down as gently as I could, like I might wake it. The ring didn't come back. I cleared the room slowly, pulled the closet door back, lit up the empty hanging rod. On the floor, in the dust, an arc where a box had been dragged and then lifted. Fresh? I couldn't tell. I stepped back out into the hall and checked the other room's bathroom, a second bedroom with a faded child's border near the ceiling. The kind of room that holds sunlight even when there isn't any. Standing there, the silence changed again. My radio hissed, quiet and steady, and underneath it, so soft I thought it was in my head, a voice said, "Are they gone?" I froze. I keyed up. "County, did you transmit?" "Negative," dispatch said. "All quiet on our end." I listened harder. The voice didn't come back on the radio. It came from behind me, or under me, or the house itself. Not a whisper exactly. A lowered voice, like in a library. It said it again, clearer. A woman's voice you might hear in a grocery store leaning toward you politely. "Are they gone?" "Sheriff's office," I said, turning and projecting my voice, the way you do when you want someone to know you're safe to talk to. "My name is Jason. I'm a deputy. If you need help, announce yourself." Nothing. A long piece of nothing, like the house was holding its breath. Then, faint, the ring started again, from downstairs. I moved slower this time. Stairs protested each step, the kind of old sound that feels personal. In the front room, the ring sounded closer and farther at the same time, like the house had angles it didn't when I walked in. I followed it down a narrow hall toward the kitchen. The counters were bare. An old refrigerator hummed in a way that made me wonder where it was getting power. On the wall by the pantry, another phone, another rotary, this one with a crack across the face like a spider web. The cord hung in a loop, and this one was plugged into the wall. The ring came from it, but the bell didn't move. The sound pressed into the room like a recording would if it had weight. "County, I have a second phone downstairs," I said. "This one is plugged in. Confirm status on power to the residence?" A different voice at dispatch this time. 12. Utility shows power cut to that address last month. I swallowed. Copy. I reached toward the phone and stopped when I saw motion out of the corner of my eye. Not a person. A slow swing of the pantry door, just an inch, like the house exhaled and moved it. I lit the crack. Inside, shelves with long dead canned goods, a broom, the kind of quiet that has a shape. On the floor, the dust somebody else didn't bother to sweep sometime in the last few months. And right there, in the dust, a clean oval where a bare foot would have been if it hadn't had toes. I didn't step in. I don't have a good explanation for why. Training says clear every space someone could fit. Something else said, don't. I stood at the edge, my breath moving dust in tiny swirls, and I heard it again, this time right in the pantry, low and patient. "Are they gone?" I kept my voice even. "Who is they?" No answer. The ring stopped, like a hand was laid on it. My stomach did a slow roll I couldn't talk myself out of. You go from the logic you're trained in to another logic that's older, from someplace before radios. The house felt like it had a center I hadn't found yet. A crackle on the radio pulled me back. "Lincoln 31 en route to your location 5 minutes out. Back up." I let the relief settle my shoulders an inch. I took a step back from the pantry and did what I could control, the rest of the house. I cleared the basement cold concrete, water heater sighing, a workbench lined with jars of screws like a parade. On one wall, at waist height, a small gray box half-pulled free junction for the phone lines. The cover hung by one screw. Inside, I expected disconnection. Instead, there were 4 wires, new tape, and a small, off-brand adapter, blinking a tiny red light alive like a heartbeat. "County," I said, shining the light right into it. "I've got an unknown device in the phone junction. Looks like a cellular bridge. Can you contact the telco and see if they have an active account on this service?" "Copy," dispatch said. "Telco shows no account for that line. They say that address has been inactive for 6 weeks." The red blink kept blinking. The basement smelled like damp paper and something old and clean, like lemons from another decade. I put my hand near the device. It warmed the air slightly. If someone had put a cell bridge in to make a landline work on cellular network, it would explain a lot: the ringing, the open line, maybe even the weird echo. But it didn't explain the timing. It didn't explain hearing myself. I snapped a couple of photos for my report, backed out, and waited upstairs where I could see the front door and the hall at the same time. Back up arrived Jensen, with his usual tired grin that says he thinks I'm overreacting until he's standing where I am. The second he stepped in, the ring started again. It poured out of the house, not from one place. Jensen looked at me and raised his eyebrows. I nodded toward the kitchen. We stood shoulder to shoulder like you do without thinking. The pantry open at its inch. He pointed. "That yours?" "No," I said. He called out loud enough that the cabinets buzzed. "Sheriff's office. If someone needs help, speak now." And in the quiet after that, in a voice like a child trying to speak lower to sound grown, the same words. "Are they gone?" Jensen's eyes cut to me. He doesn't spook easy. We used to laugh at rookies who jumped at their own shadow. We weren't laughing. He angled toward the pantry, and I raised a hand without thinking. He stopped. He's a good partner like that. We might have gone in. I don't know. But we didn't have to decide, because the phone in the living room rang, sharp and hard, and then my portable flashed with a call from dispatch. "Lincoln 12. We have the open line recorded. We can play it over the air if requested." "Negative," I said automatically. Playing 911 audio over the radio is for training or emergencies. This was neither, and maybe both. "Can you tell me what the caller said?" There was a pause while someone at a desk did work we'd never see. "It sounds like you, 12. Say again?" "It sounds like you. Your voice. saying sheriff's office and knocking. And then there's another voice under it. The same phrase. Different timbre. We're trying to isolate it. Static filled the places words should go. Jensen lifted his shoulder toward me. "What's the plan?" he whispered. "We document, we clear, we secure the door. That's always the plan. It's a good plan. We check the rest of the place in pairs, the way we were taught. The only thing that moved was air. We snapped photos of the phones, the pantry, the basement device. I bagged the adapter with gloved hands. When we turned to leave, the pantry door had swung the inch closed, and neither of us could say we saw it move. Outside, the cold cleaned us off." Jensen shook his shoulders like a dog shedding rain. "You hear that voice, right?" he said. Low, like he didn't want the house to know we were talking about it. "I heard something," I said. "Cop answer. We secured the door with a new lock from my kit, left a notice card, and called it cleared. That's the paperwork version. The rest of it doesn't fit in the boxes." Back at the station, hours later, dispatch invited me to listen to the 911 tape. The quality wasn't great, the system's old, and you hear a squeal from the recorder when someone moves their headset. But you can hear me, clear enough. You can hear the knock, and under it, like someone practicing the words with me, an older female voice saying, "Sheriff's office," then tiny and close to the microphone, "Are they gone?" Telco techs came out the next day to look at the junction. They said the adapter was a cheap cellular gateway people use in storms, when lines go down, no evidence of an active SIM. The phones, they said, shouldn't have rung. The power company sent their guy. He shrugged and said maybe there was residual line power he couldn't account for. Everyone wrote their piece and left. That house stood 2 more months before the bank sold it. 2 weeks after the call, I got a report from the assisted living facility about the old gentleman who'd been there. He'd passed. In the file, there was a note from the intake nurse. His wife had died years earlier, stayed in that house right through a storm that blew down half the trees on Old Mill. She refused to leave the pantry until it was quiet. The ambulance report noted she kept asking the same question over and over. You can guess which. I don't know if any of that means anything. I know what my body did in that house and in that basement. I know what the tape sounds like. I know that sometimes, on late nights when the radio takes its time, my portable will thump once on my vest, the way it does with a lost transmission, and there'll be nothing on the channel but a thin electric hiss and something underneath it shaped like a question. When people ask what the scariest thing on a night shift is, they want stories about chases and doors you have to kick. There's plenty of that. But the ones that don't leave you are quieter. You knock, you announce, you step into the old air, and the house says something back that you can't log under any call type we have. Story number 2. We don't call it 911 here. It's 999. Different numbers, same feeling in your stomach when control drops your call sign after midnight. I was a response PC on nights, marked unit, north end of the city. It had been a quiet run, 1 drink drive, 1 neighbor dispute over a bin, and then the sky did that thing our sky does, where the rain doesn't fall so much as hang in the air and wait for you to walk through it. Control to Sierra 7. 1. Open 999 from a landline. Silent solution triggered. Faint audio, possibly water running. Bracken House, Longley Estate, flat number, not confirmed. Are you free? I looked over at my partner Jenks, and he already had his hand on the light switch. 7. 1. Show us en route, I said. Any further? Call taker reports line answered. No speech initially. Caller appears to have pressed 55. There's a repeating tone and a female automated voice in the background. Something about operator connected. No answer to callbacks. Building has a warden call system. Ambulance also notified. Standby. Silent solution means the caller pressed 55 to indicate they can't talk. You don't ignore those. Bracken House I knew by the smell the council put it up in the early 70s. Poured concrete and forever damp. The lift had been out of service on and off for months. We'd been there for all the usual reasons you go to a tower. Noise complaints, stale welfare checks, fire alarms that hated sleep. We rolled in under yellow sodium lights that made everything look jaundiced. The foyer glass was filmed with street grime. The entry buzzer panel was the kind of old that shows fingerprints from 20 years ago. I pressed the trades button, and nothing happened. I pressed again. The door's maglock complained and released with a click. Out of sympathy, more than design. Inside, the air was warm and half lived in fried onions and laundry powder, and the metallic tang of the lift shaft. The lift car sat on the ground floor, with the doors half open like a mouth held that way too long. A laminated sheet taped to it said, in a cheerful font, "Please use stairs. 7. 1 on scene," I said. "We'll make to the warden office." Every sheltered block has a little cupboard somewhere with a warden call, rack lights, and a handset. A line to a call center that checks on the older residents. Those calls don't go to us unless someone on the other end hears something they don't like. The office at Bracken House was a cupboard within a cupboard. The door was closed, but the key is always in the local set. I swung it open, and the wedge of light hit a bank of old equipment like a spaceship control panel, only more tired. The Tunstall unit sat central, its panel lit with steady greens and a single red LED blinking a slow, patient blink. No handset in the cradle. The hole where it should have sat had dust shadows around it. "Control," I said. "We're at the warden rack. 1 unit showing alarm. Do we have a flat number now?" "Negative," the radio answered back. "BT can only tell us the line is from the building switchboard. Ambulance control advises their call taker can hear what might be a recorded voice. Your call has been connected. Please wait for an operator." Then water. Then nothing. I put my hand against the unit like it would tell me more. The red LED blinked at a heartbeat rate. On the shelf below, the missing handset lay on its side with the cable draped across a binder. I pressed it to my ear out of habit. I expected click and dead tone. What I got was a room tone that belonged to somewhere else. Not the cupboard I was in, but a bigger, hollower space with one sound beneath it, the slow, forgiving sound of a tap running into a metal sink. Jenks cocked his head. "You getting that too?" "Yeah," I said, and then the voice came, soft and automated, a bit of tape hiss under it. "Your call has been answered. Please, stay on the line." Only it wasn't the unit saying it. The Tunstall wasn't that fancy, and anyway, its speaker was quiet. The voice was in the earpiece, as if I'd pressed my ear to someone else's wall. I glanced at the connectors on the back of the rack. Half the ports had nothing in them. One of the incoming pairs had been taped and retaped with electrical tape so many times the glue had gone shiny. "Water running," Control said. "Ambulance are 2 minutes out. Are you able to identify where it might be coming from?" We climbed. Stairs were concrete with that pebbly finish designed to chew up your boots. At the 3rd floor landing, the strip light flickered once, then decided it had done enough. The sound of water came and went like the building was breathing. The clank of a heating system that hadn't committed to being on. We called out as we moved. "The patter you develop so you're not just a surprise in a doorway." "Police. 999 call. If you've called for help, shout." On the 5th, the water sound got clearer. We followed it down the corridor painted breeze block. Fire doors with the paint rubbed off where people kick them open with their heel. The numbers on the doors had been stuck on twice over the years. So 152 had a shadow 19 under the varnish, and the effect was that you didn't trust any number at first glance. Outside 57, we got something else. A tone in the air like a phone off the hook, only thinner. The door had a little window above it, wired glass. I knocked. "Police," I said. "If you can't speak, knock on your floor or the wall." Silence obediently rearranged itself around my voice. Then we both heard what we were listening for. 2 light taps. Not on the door. Somewhere to the left, through the wall, like someone with no weight in their hand was tapping the drink shelf of a metal trolley. "Control," I said. "We're at flat 5 to 7. We've got tapping in response. Any occupant details?" "Affirmative," Control said, her voice coming a shade faster. "Council records show registered to a Mrs. Edith H., 81, known to the Warden Service. Last contact 1 week ago. Next of kin listed as a niece. No key holder listed." I tried the handle. The Yale moved an inch and held. "Authority to force?" I asked. There was a pause while a sergeant somewhere had to weigh up budgets, doors, needs, all of it. Then, "Authority given. Ambulance aware. No signs of danger to life?" "Unknown," I said. and looked at the gap between door and frame. The chain was on. No light from inside. We force the way you force, when you don't actually want to, just enough to get the chain to lift off the screw with the right angle. Door gave that reluctant lurch, and we were in. The air was warmer, and immediately wrong. Stale, like a house on a hot day that's been closed too long. Not the sweet sour of a long-term welfare. Nothing like that, just warmth and old laundry and something faintly metallic from ancient plumbing. "Mrs. H?" I called. "It's the police. We're here because you called 999. The tap was in the kitchen, a dribble into a small stainless steel sink, magnified by the drip hitting an old aluminium pan someone had wedged under it. The kitchen itself was tidy in the way older people's kitchens are. 2 cups, 1 plate drying on a rack, a floral tin of tea bags, the sugar in a glass jar with a spoon waiting in it. The tap wasn't open. It was one of those with the rubber washers that sigh after you've turned them off. Droplets ran irregularly and made it sound busier than it was. On the counter, a lifeline unit sat with its speaker light pulsing. A red pull cord hung by the kitchen doorway. The unit's power light showed green. The plug was in. I tracked the flex to the wall socket and watched the switch do nothing. The wall had a blank where the meter should have been. An empty plastic cavity. No power to the flat at all, at least not the kind that went through a meter. "Jenks," I said quietly, and he nodded, seeing the same thing. Things that shouldn't be on. The off-hook tone wasn't in the kitchen. It was in the hall, at knee height, old brass, and heavy. A proper phone sat in a niche like the flat had a plan for a time when a phone was a piece of furniture. The receiver was on the cradle, not off. No reason for any tone. I picked it up and got nothing but that thin in-between sound. Dead, and yet not. Under it, soft, there it was again, the automated woman. "Your call has been answered. Please, stay on the line." Then, over the top of that, a voice that wasn't a recording. Not young, not especially strong, but not frail either. A voice like a primary school teacher, who's tired and kind anyway. "I can't find them," she said. "I can't find them. They've gone quiet." "Mrs. H?" I said into the plastic as if it mattered. "It's police. Can you tell me where you are?" The voice didn't meet me. It kept running where it was running. "I'll wait," it said, and there was a clink of enamel on enamel, like a cup placed carefully in a sink. "I'll wait till it's quiet." "Control," I said. "We've got a female voice on the line. Sounds recorded or looped. We're searching the premises. Can you ring the lifeline provider and see if they've got a live call open with this flat?" "Already on," Control said. "Tunstall say the flat is marked void. Warden service suspended pending refurbishment. They're as confused as we are. They're ringing the line. Stand by." We cleared. Bedroom neat, caved-in pillows like a head had only just left. A card on the dressing table with neat handwriting in blue ink. Niece's number. GP. Electric. In the airing cupboard, a stack of the council's void property leaflets rubber-banded. On top, a notice. Electricity meter removal completed. Date last month. I put my hand over the spot where a hot water cylinder would have warmed the cupboard, cold as a locker. We moved as we were taught, call out the corners, don't stand in doorways, don't get drawn down a rabbit hole into the kind of quiet you can't report. The bathroom had no mirror above the sink that might have been removed with the meter, and the absence made the whole room more like a waiting room than a place you live. From the hall, just by the front door where the skirting board was scuffed by years of shoes, there came 3 fast taps, not knuckles. The crisp secco of a teaspoon on a glass. "You hear that?" Jenks said. "I've got it," I answered, and crouched. The sound came again, identical. I ran my palm along the skirting. A draft breathed along the edge of the carpet, and through the draft a second quality to the quiet I don't know how to write down. Like a recording of quiet. Like something in another room was being played to us through ours. "Control," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Can you confirm the status of the 999 line? We can hear audio at our end. Unknown source." "Affirmative," Control replied. "We still have an open line with background. Our operator is hearing your voices. And standby, she says she can also hear herself." The radio went still long enough that I could hear the fabric, of my vest shift. Sierra 7. 1. Our call taker reports hearing her own prompts played back with a delay of approximately 4 minutes. Tunstall deny any call on their system. BT, unable to trace further. I looked at the phone in my hand and saw my own fingertips in the dead shine of its cradle. I was suddenly aware of how easily a person could get turned around in a small space. How your voice, counted back at you from some accidental loop, can make your head swim like the idea of the sea when you're in a bathtub. Jenks cleared his throat. "Mrs. H," he called again, louder. "It's police. If you're hiding, it's safe to come out. We're here to make sure you're all right." From behind us, as neat as if she were standing on the doormat and couldn't quite see over the chain, the voice said, "Don't go yet." It didn't come from the phone. It didn't come from the unit. It came from the flat in the way a smell comes from a kitchen, you remember. It was considerate, the way some old voices are considerate. It made me straighten up without meaning to. "Ma'am?" I said to the doorway. There was nothing in it but the shadow of the chain swinging where I'd lifted it off. No movement in the corridor beyond. Inside, the drip went on, and the cutlery drawer murmured in its runner like it was thinking about coming open and changed its mind. We stayed. We didn't rush to leave because the old training takes over. Nobody wants to be the one that clears too fast and finds out later there was someone behind a towel on the floor. We checked behind the sofa, under the bed, the hall cupboard with the Hoover in it. We checked the windows. From the 5th floor at 2 in the morning, the estate looked like someone had turned the sky down rather than the lights up. There were hospital blue flashes in the middle distance, where the bypass bent around the city. Ambulance knocked a minute later, and we talked them through the same air. Paramedic looked at the lifeline unit and did the same thing I had. Plugged and unplugged an unpowered plug. Shrug. He went to his radio and spoke to his control like I had spoken to mine, and his face took on the same polite frown. 7-1, control, the radio in my shoulder said gently. "We've reached the niece. She confirms her aunt passed away 3 weeks ago in hospital. Council have had the property since then." I looked at the carpet, at our prints in the dust where we'd cleaned the fibers with our boots. "Copy," I said. It didn't add up with the false cheer of it nearly being morning. "We're going to secure and leave a card," I told the room. It felt mad to say it and wrong not to. "We've checked. There's no one here." The off-hook tone cut dead like a hand on a speaker. The automated voice, her voice said, "Thank you." Only you could hear the tape in it this time. The wobble from reuse. The stretch in the magnetic band that happens when something's been played back too often. I set the phone back down carefully and found I didn't like my hand being near the cradle, as if it could catch. We locked up the best we could with what we had broken and left the notice for the council repair team. Back in the car, heaters working hard, the world's edges softened by condensation on the glass. We wrote the basics for control, and they wrote them again for theirs. The warden service promised a tech in the morning. BT promised nothing at all because whatever we were describing wasn't in their manual. When I came off nights, before I slept, I listened to the 999 audio that Control had clipped to my log. It was messy the way all 999 audio was too many backgrounds. A call taker doing a job in a room with other jobs. You can hear her say the prompts. "This is the police, can you speak? If you are in immediate danger, press 55. You can hear us knocking distantly like rain on a different roof. And then, if you turn it up and sit in it, you can hear something that shouldn't be possible unless a call can fold on itself like paper." You can hear her voice again. The call takers, repeating her own line from 4 minutes earlier, with the same hitch in breath she didn't know she had. And under that, as polite as a thank you wave at a zebra crossing, a woman saying, "Don't go yet." And then, softer, All right, quiet now. I don't pretend to know what we stood in. There are explanations if you want them. Patch cables in the warden cupboard crossed. An old metal pan making a drip sound like pipes being tapped. Tape delay somewhere in BT's innards, sending us our voices back. The council sent an electrician who said, deadpan, that sometimes old wiring ghosts excess. He laughed when he said ghosts, and then he checked the isolator in the hallway and found it was off and had been for weeks. We went back 2 weeks later to a new door and fresh paint over the numbers. A workman was painting over the shadow of the old one in 9 under the 5 and 7. He had a radio on that was talking about a football match. The air was ordinary. The lift still didn't work. If you ask me what call plays back in my head on the way home, it isn't the big ones. It's this. The way someone can ask for help and you can get there and the building itself holds the last ask and gives it back to you. Neat as a library voice. Like it doesn't know what else to do with it. You stand in it. You do the minutes. You clear. And then, very undramatically, you carry it with you into the day you haven't slept in. Story number 3. I'm with the RCMP, H Division Southwest Nova Scotia, Coastal Detachment, where the radio can sound like it's underwater when the fog sits just right. We run plain language more than codes out here. On nights, it's usually just one of us on the far side of the peninsula, the other unit trying to cover the ferry road and the 101. It was late October. After midnight, no wind. Fog so thick you could taste the salt, like a coin on your tongue. Comms came over with that careful tone they get when they're reading something twice. H17, open 911 from a landline. Map returns to Gull Point Light Interpretive Center. Caller silent. Faint audio in the background. Possible horn or tone. No answer to callback. Are you available? Gull Point is a retired lighthouse on a spit of rock, turned into a little museum in the summer. Off-season, the municipality boards it up, and the only sounds are gulls and the ferry horn way out past the shoals. The foghorn at Gull Point has been dead for years. It's a story the locals tell with a shrug. Coast Guard took the horn away, said GPS replaced it. H17 copies, I said, warming my hands on the cup that had been good a half hour earlier. En route from Centerton, ETA 15. Copy? Combs said. For your situational second open line followed by hang-up, same number. Our operator notes a recorded voice in the background, female. Please hold for the next available operator. Then a single ringtone. We're trying the telco. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. I felt that slow, familiar narrowing you get when it stops being a routine drive. I flipped on my takedowns for the first bend, then shut them again when the fog reflected it right back into my face. The road out to Gull Point is 1.5 lanes at best, scraped into rock with salt marsh on either side. Even the radio sounds damp out there. On the way, comms updated. H17, telco returns the line as inactive, disconnected 3 months ago. Any contact at that site after hours is supposed to go to the municipality. They're not answering their on-call mobile. Understood, I said. Do you have a number of a caretaker? My breath made fog on the inside of the windshield. That's how much moisture was in the air. The wipers became a habit more than a solution. Negative, comms said. We'll see if the civic office has an answering service. Stand by. The spit revealed itself in increments: the gravel, the chain across it, the wooden sign that said, Gull Point Light closed for season, with a smiley face someone had drawn in Sharpie like that would soften winter. Beyond, a black shape and then shape again, the tower and the museum building, boarded windows like eyelids. Somewhere out on the water, a bell buoy knocked twice, polite and wrong for the tide. H17 on scene, I said, stepping out into the kind of quiet that blankets everything. My lights pushed a flat white wall and stopped. No vehicles. Site appears secure from first glance. I'll be on foot. The gravel didn't crunch so much as squish under a film of wet. My boots picked up sand like the beach wanted to keep me. I stood and listened. You can hear more in fog because the rest of the world gives up being noisy. I waited for the ferry's distant bass note. Instead, I heard 3 things layered faintly: a small bell at sea, the slow lap of tide against rock, and, so soft I thought at first it was my own blood, a long, low horn. It wasn't the ferry. It was closer, and it had that old, mournful, mechanical voice a real foghorn has. Only there wasn't one here anymore. Comms, I said quietly, more to anchor myself than anything. I've got a horn of some kind out here. Can you patch Coast Guard, MCTS Yarmouth? I want to confirm no activated fog signal at Gull Point. Stand by, comms said, keys clicking somewhere in Dartmouth or Halifax or wherever they sat with the maps in the screens. A second later, H17, Yarmouth confirms no stationed aids to navigation active at Gull Point. They report foghorns decommissioned provincially. No planned signal tests. They're monitoring channel 16 in quiet. Copy, I said. My breath felt like a coat. The boards over the museum's windows were brined white at the edges. The tower door had a hasp and a municipal padlock on it, plus someone's old habit twine around the handle, as if that ever stopped a door. My radio hissed the way it does when it tries to switch towers. Over the hiss, like a voice through a pillow, I heard my own call sign. H17. H17. Copy. Not comms. Not the right mic discipline, not the right accent. A voice that sounded like someone repeating what they'd heard, a beat too slow. I cupped my mic out of reflex. H17, go ahead. Silence. Then more clearly, like a radio held next to a hard wall, a woman's recorded voice. Your call is important to us. Please hold. It wasn't coming from my radio. It was in the fog, in the boards, in the tower, somewhere. The horn, long and patient, answered without caring about any of us. We're not taught to be romantic about old places. They're buildings. They get cleared, same as a strip mall. I rattled the padlock. It was genuine. I walked the perimeter and checked for new pry marks. Prints in the damp on the grate. Lower boards. Anything to tell me a human had been here, and recently. My light hit the placard by the door. The story of Gull Point in proud serif font. Built 1910. First lit 1911. Last keeper retired 1999. Automated until decommissioning 2014. A photo of a man in a cap standing on the catwalk with his wife, halfway out the door holding a basket like a postcard. My radio clipped again, and this time it was comms. Clear. H17. We've had 4 open lines now from that landline. Our call taker says she can hear what sounds like an old phone ringing, and the phrase, "Keep the light on," spoken quietly. The phrase repeats. The line disconnects. No inbound caller ID. Do you require another unit? Send H24 when they clear, I said. Backup was 25 minutes if you drove it like you'd get paid for a new suspension. I'm going to do a visual of the interior through gaps. Stand by. I put a shoulder to a board gently and saw nothing but the darkness you get in a closed building by the sea. The horn came again, rolling right up my spine like it knew me personally. There's an old ladder cut into the rock that the summer staff used to get to the backside, the way to the generator shed. I went that way because all the movements in me were used to going forward. The generator shed sat on stilts above a tide pool that would be full at high water. The door was locked with a different lock, shiny, new this season. Comms, can you ring Muni again? I said, nudging it with my knuckles. If there's a caretaker key nearby, I'd rather not cut. Trying, comms said. No answer at the posted number or the after-hours cell. We can page the on-call manager, but it's going to be a delay. Copy. My light found a gap at the roofline. Through it I saw an orange extension cord, coiled like a sleeping animal, and, beside it, the corner of a plastic tank. Empty generators don't run. You'll find that in no manual in every winter. A horn that shouldn't be. A phone line that doesn't exist. A generator that looked like sleep. I stepped back toward the tower by force of habit, and then stopped. Through one of the boards, someone had drilled a small hole years ago for a cable. It was at cheek height for me. I leaned to it and put my ear there without thinking about why, and heard something that made my skin crawl in the most basic, ordinary way. A phone ringing in a small, bare room. Not a chirp like a cell. The real ring of a metal bell. It rang twice, politely, and stopped. Then the recorded voice we'd been told about. Your call is important to us. Please hold. And then a woman closer to the mic than you're supposed to be. A voice you'd trust to tell you the weather. Keep the light on. Keep it on until it's quiet. Comms, I said, keeping my own voice steady in a way I practice and didn't learn at Depot. I have audible phone tones from inside the tower. Can you confirm telco again? Affirmative, comms said. Telco insists line is disconnected at the pole. No active account. They're asking if someone could have put a cell booster on site. No signs of power, I said. I'm going to cut to check for occupied person. I hated it. I also wasn't going to leave a person locked in a tower if they existed, and were waiting for a phone to do the job of a lighthouse. The Muni lock took more swings than I wanted, and fewer than it could have. There's a line you cross when you break into a building you're supposed to respect, because the town has a ribbon cutting there in June. The door sighed and I slid in sideways, nose full of old salt, diesel, and that weird wax smell you get when a place has been painted too many times. Inside was cleaner than I expected, off-season tidy. 2 folding posters leaned against a wall. A display case with black and white photos of the keepers. On a table under a banner that said, "Hands on History," sat a rotary phone the color of bone. It was connected to nothing. The line lay beside it, the plug caught on a screw head as if it had been lifted and left there. The phone was the thing that rang. I knew that the way you know your own coat by feel. The tower door was open a hand's width. The first step up was damp, the stone slick as a fish. The horn sounded again, as if I'd gotten closer to it. It vibrated the metal in my light. Sheriff. My mouth had almost said it the way American TV gets into your head when you're a kid. Police, I corrected out loud to the empty place. RCMP. If you're inside, call out. The phone rang once, like it wanted to answer for me. I went up slowly, my boots on the outside of the steps where the wear wasn't as bad. 90% of policing out here is boots on the outside of steps. At the first landing, there was a little room where years of summer students had kept things that didn't fit the modern narrative. A cot, a bucket with a coil of thick rope, a ledger book with "log" in tidy letters on the front. I ran my light over the ledger without meaning to. The last page had 4 lines from 2014, each the same and different in that old keeper shorthand. 1,908 light extinguished. Fog signal ceased. 1,911 light relit for test. Fog signal, 1 long, every 60. Then, a dozen pages earlier in a different hand, an entry that had bled even though the ink was old. Keep the light on until it is quiet. No date, no name, no humor in it. The horn didn't care if I read. It came again, breathier. I went up, and my shoulders adapted to the curve like they had done this a century ago, in a body that was not mine. At the top, the lantern room was black as a cup, until my beam found the Fresnel lens, immaculate, prisms stacked like a cathedral made of ice. Someone had taken care of it long after the light had no job. You can see your own face in a Fresnel lens 10 times at once if you look wrong. I looked straight at the metal gallery instead. No generator up here, obviously. No light source. No switch. Just the lens and the faintest sense that it was not still. Not turning, no, but poised, like a dancer in a photograph. My radio whispered. In the whisper, so soft it could have been the lens moving air on its own, I heard my own voice say, from 2 minutes earlier, H-17 on scene. The phrase ran out of the speaker tinny and tired. Then a beat later again, farther, like someone had recorded it down a stairwell. I squeezed my mic. Comms. Are you rebroadcasting? Negative, comms said. We're getting very poor coverage from you. We've still got the landline ringing in waves. H-24 is 15 out. Copy, I said, not happy with how small my voice felt in the glass room. The horn sounded, and this time I felt it in the catwalk through my feet. I stepped out onto the walkway because that's what we do when we want to know if we're afraid. We put ourselves closer to the thing. The fog had a shape. That's what I remember. It wasn't flat. It lay in folds over the water, and you could believe there were islands where the folds rose and fell. Far off, a faint arc of a ferry's running lights. Paused, thought better of it, vanished. Keep the light on, the woman's voice said, very clearly. Not from my radio, not from below. Right next to my ear, as if the lens itself had been waiting to say it. Polite, purposeful, the kind of instruction that has kept families alive in storms for 100 years. Keep the light on until it's quiet. There's no light, I said, because I was tired in my bones, and some part of me thought information mattered. We don't run one here anymore. The horn answered for her. 1 long. The way you'd mark time in a place with no clocks. I won't pretend I was brave about the next bit. I went down the stairs not quite fast, but not with the care I would have wanted to watch myself have. At the first landing, the ledger lay open to that line. At the base, the rotary phone was off the cradle as if someone had picked it up and set it down wrong. It hadn't been when I went up. Comms, I said, not bothering to disguise the thickness in my voice. I'm clearing the interior. No person's located. Can you advise if 911 is still open? Affirmative, Com said. Our call taker says the phrases are looping now. She can also hear you. Delayed. We've recorded her own prompts playing back with a lag. Telco suggests a cross on a repeater. Coast Guard says if anyone has a personal locator beacon in that area, they're not getting it. They're quiet. H-24 is on the spit. H-24's headlights arrive the way light does in fog after the sound of the engine, as if the light was learning to walk. He pulled up beside my unit and got out, collar up, eyes squinting like the fog would ease if he looked the right way. You've got that face, he said quietly. It's a face I've seen on other people, at other scenes where the paperwork never seems to hold everything. What have you got? Phones ringing in a dead building, I said. A horn that doesn't exist. Recordings of us when we shouldn't be recorded. He gave a sound somewhere between a laugh and a breath, and we went in together to do it right. 2 sets of eyes, 2 sets of notes, 2 voices calling out that we were police in a museum like anyone in a storybook would hear or not hear. At the table, the phone behaved. It sat like a prop. We brought it to life by touching it, and then it was dead again when we let go. The ledger's line was still there. We both looked at it like it might develop new ink if we watched. When we stepped back out, a new sound made us both turn. The generator shed had a tone to it you recognize if you've ever been near a machine that's plugged into nothing and still wants to be something. Not running, not buzzing, just a long, patient metallic hum like a memory. Through the gap I'd looked through before, the orange extension cord did not move. On the wall, a green LED on a battery backup blinked once, as if it had decided on its own to be brave, then stayed dark. Winter does strange things to electronics, someone will tell you, and you'll nod like that explains anything. We secured what we'd cut with a length of police tape that felt performative, and left a note that made sense on paper, forced for welfare concern due to 911 open line. We put the phone back in its exact rectangle of dust. We wrote the file and I requested, politely and without theater, the 911 audio when it was available, the way I would on any odd call. Then we left, because there was nothing else to do without making the situation something you would read about differently in the morning. In the morning I listened to the clip in the detachment, coffee reheated, everything normal on the surface. You can hear the call taker's voice doing the prompts we all know verbatim. 911, do you require police, fire, or ambulance? If you can't speak, press any key. Then you hear the ring of an old telephone tinny, and too close to the mic. Then the recorded, your call is important line. And then my voice arrives late to my own call, a sound like boots on stone in the background. The horn faint and insane to hear on a telephone recording. After that, a woman's voice just breath above a whisper, but enunciating with care. Keep the light on. Telco did what Telco does. They went to the pedestal at the head of the spit and opened it and took photos of wires that don't have feelings. They reported no active copper to the site. The municipality sent their electrician who shrugged and showed me the meter with no wheel to spin, no juice. He told me his father was a keeper in another place years ago, and then told me to forget he told me because it made his eyes stupid for a second. Coast Guard sent an email that read like a report and a memory at once. No horns, no tests, no locals messing with us, please and thanks. They are polite, even when they're sure you're wrong. A week later, a winter storm came up the bay and put the spit under for half a day. Sand rearranged itself the way only the Bay of Fundy can do. And the path to the generator shed looked like it had been erased by a hand. The municipality called to say the door I'd cut had swelled, and anyone trying to get inside needed to shoulder it like we had. I went out with them on a dry afternoon so it wouldn't feel like a story I'd made up in my truck at 3 in the morning. The air was cold and ordinary. The horn didn't speak. Inside, the phone sat where it Saturday. The ledger looked like a ledger, and the line that had bled had dried to the color of tea. The LED on the backup didn't blink because the backup wasn't there. They told me they'd never installed one. I took a picture of the empty space where I thought I'd seen a little green brave light and felt foolish enough that I said nothing. I don't tell this to make it into more than it should be. You could explain pieces if you wanted. Radios cross each other in weather like this. Old buildings sing with the sea inside their walls. If you leave a phone near a speaker, You can record a voice that plays itself back with a delay your ear swears is a person. If you've ever stood by a dead bell and heard it ring, you know there are explanations that mean nothing when you're there. But I am an ordinary person in a uniform that makes me sound more certain than I am. I know the feel of a foghorn in your bones. I know the shape of a recorded voice through a rotary handset when there is no cord to feed it. I know the way a piece of equipment will try to be the thing it was meant for long after the job is gone. And I know that sometimes a place doesn't know what to do with the last instruction it was given. After that night, comms clipped a note onto the occurrence file. Future calls from this number, likely phantom, advise members to treat as unfounded unless other evidence. It's a reasonable note. We all have them. Still, a month later, the 911 center had 2 more open lines after midnight from the same non-existent number. Both times, the same sequence: ring, recording. Then the same voice, soft and practical as a shopping list. Keep the light on until it's quiet. We don't have the light anymore. That's the point of a museum, to tell you about what used to be. And yet there I was on my day off, driving past the turn with a coffee, and telling myself I was just taking the long way home because the leaves were good. The road turned toward the spit and I didn't. The fog lay flat over the water like a blanket someone had not quite pulled up to their chin. I rolled the window down because October air helps on days when the sleep you get is thin and easy to tear. The wind brought me fairy horn and gulls. No other horn. I told myself this was better. The ordinary noises. The present tense. That night, I still put the phone on my bedside table face down, as if it had a face to look away with. Around 3, because that's when the body remembers a uniform even when you're not wearing it, my cell buzzed once with a restricted number and didn't ring. No voicemail. No missed call. Just that soft buzz phones make when a tower pings all the little rectangles we carry and asks where we are. It meant nothing. It made me look through the dark to the corner of my room, where the light from the street makes a shape on the wall that could be anything if you think too hard. I've been to plenty of calls with open lines that are more human and more dangerous than a museum in fog. Those stay with you because people stay with you. This one stays because the place did what a person would. It called and waited and called again. It asked for help in sentences that had kept other people alive. It asked an old job to be real for 1 more hour in the middle of the night. And maybe that's all it was. Old instructions wearing themselves out. Or maybe they don't wear out. Maybe there's a part of the world that keeps doing what it was told until someone with a key and a ladder and a certain kind of voice tells it to stand down. Nobody did. We wrote our reports. We locked the door. We told each other to be smart about it. And now, when the fog lies in the fields, the way the sea lies on the shore, I find myself watching the horizon like the lens is out there, turning in a room with no power, waiting for a light that won't come, and telling itself with impossible patience, keep the light on until it's quiet. Story number 4. I'm a senior constable with a highway patrol unit in the western part of the state. Out here, the map is mostly long lines and little dots. Between the dots, there's a lot of silence, the kind that lives in the grass and in the heat on the bitumen. Nights run in 2 moods. Busy like a storm with drink, drivers and road trains clipping roos, or so still you start hearing the hum of your own headlights. This was one of the still ones. Dry season, cool night, a moon that made the road look like a ribbon somebody forgot to put away. Comms came up on the car radio with that measured voice they get when the call taker is typing with their eyes. All units, open 000, from a payphone listed at Emu Creek Rest Area, eastbound side, Warrego Highway. Caller silent. Faint, beeping tone in background. No response to callbacks. Charlie 74, are you close? I was already glancing at the distance marker through the windscreen. Charlie 74, that's us. 10 minutes east. Copy 74. Operator notes a recorded voice in the background, female, saying, please hold. Your call has been connected. Then a high-tone beep repeating. No further. 000 calls from payphones aren't rare. They make sense. People still use them out here when their mobiles go dead between towers, or when the battery dies somewhere you don't want it to. But the rest area they named was halfway between any real town and anything you'd call a service. 1 bin, 1 faded sign with caravans drawn on it, and a concrete pad where a Telstra phone used to sit. I'd seen the empty bolt holes myself a few months before. They'd taken that phone out and left 4 rusty circles and a bit of conduit like a stub cigarette. Any vehicles reported stopped there? I asked, partly to fill the car with my own voice. Negative, comms said. We'll try Telstra to confirm line status. Ambulance notified to standby. No covert or plainclothes units anywhere near. Advise when on scene. We rolled east. The highway was a ribbon going forward, and a different ribbon coming back. A road train went the other way, 3 trailers long, lights strung like a necklace, and the driver gave us that little nod you give anyone else who's awake at that hour. My partner that night, Jacko, leaned the seat back and watched the scrub slide by. The radio went quiet in the way it doesn't in the city. It takes a certain kind of concentration to listen for something that isn't happening. I found myself counting the reflective posts and their spacing. At this hour, you can trick your head into thinking the road is moving and you're still. 7, 4. Telstra confirmed the number belongs to the MU Creek payphone. Their system shows it as decommissioned hardware removed 3 months ago. No active service. Comms came back. Yet they also say they're seeing an incoming call flag from that number. They can't route a call back. Roger, I said. We're 3 out. We turned off the cruise and let the car coast into the little slip where the rest area opens. The headlights built the place from the ground up, first the bin, then the picnic table under a steel roof, then the sign with a sun-faded map. Nothing big enough to hide behind. No cars, no people, no caravan lights tucked in the scrub. Just the flat little curve of concrete where the payphone had been. The 4 bolts. A quiet kind of punctuation. Comms, 7-4 on scene, I said, and stepped out into air that smelled like dust cooling down. Cicadas had wound themselves out for the night. You could hear the highway like an ocean off to one side, even though it was a single line. No vehicles, no persons observed, I added, because that's what you say when you can't see what you are here to see. Jacko wandered the picnic shelter like a ghost of a school teacher checking for rubbish. I walked to the concrete pad and shone the torch down. The bolt holes were full of red dust. A single ant came and went like a commuter. Then I heard it. At first I thought it was the car radio making its lost signal tone. But the radio was quiet. This was thinner, more brittle, the kind of beep you used to hear on very old modems and very old answering machines. One high note, pause, again, and under it, faint, a woman's voice recorded, the way the recording rides the air differently to a person. Please hold. Your call has been connected. I looked at Jacko. He looked at me. He did that little shrug that says, well, there it is. And I realized we were both holding our breaths like kids listening at a door they shouldn't be at. Comms, I said. We've got audible tone at the rest area. Sounds like a phone system. No visible handset. Do we have authority to search for a person off the roadway? We may be dealing with someone disoriented in the scrub. Affirmative, comms said immediately. Ambulance is staging 10 kilometers west. Telstra advised their local tech is asleep and would prefer we didn't open any infrastructure. There was a slight grin in the operator's voice that told me techs are the same everywhere. If you have concern for life, do what you need to. We have torches for this wide beam, not too harsh. The scrub at Emu Creek is low, leaky with gaps between the saltbush and the acacias, sandy tracks leading nowhere. We called out as we walked. Police, 000. If you can hear me, call out. You don't shout in the bush unless you need to. Sound travels like water out here. It either goes everywhere or nowhere at once. Somewhere behind me, near the concrete pad, the tone chimed again. Please hold, the voice said, soft, like someone was very close to the microphone. Then a different sound, the very particular ring of a payphone. Not an iPhone, not anything from a shop now. A metal bell inside a metal box. I stood still until I could feel the weight of my own boots settle into the sand. It was coming from the ground, not from the shelter, not from the table, from somewhere under the pad. Jacko, I said quietly, come have a listen. We both crouched like two blokes investigating a lawnmower. The ring carried through the concrete, as if concrete were a speaker. I couldn't have told you if it was my imagination, or if I could see the bolt holes vibrate with the sound. Near the pad, there's a little square lid in the earth, T-shape on top, for a lifting key. Telstra pits like that hide the knots in the cable. I didn't have a T-key, and I wasn't about to go prying up national infrastructure because a noise offended my sense of normal. I put my hand on the earth near the lid and felt nothing. Neither heat, nor vibration. Just the cool of night earth. The ring stopped. Then, quiet as choosing a word, a human voice. Male, older than me, warm and distant, like a grandfather reading in another room. "G'day, operator," the voice said. MU Creek phone. It wasn't in my radio. It wasn't in the air. Not exactly. It had the ghost of distance in it that you only hear when sound travels through wire and coil. It said the words with the rhythm of someone who had said them 1,000 times politely. "Comms," I said, almost whispering without meaning to. "I'm hearing a voice. Not ours. Male. Sounds..." I stopped because I didn't know a way to say, "Sounds like the payphone." From when it existed. "We are still receiving open lines from that number," comms replied calmly. "Our call taker is hearing a male voice too. He says, 'Operator, could you put me through to the road crew?'" Then the line drops. Telstra have no record of a call path. "Are you okay to continue?" Affirmative. My mouth was dry in a schoolyard way. I took a sip from the bottle in the car and found the water warmer than I wanted. We did a proper search line 40 meters out from the pad, one of us at the road edge, watching for the odd insomniac driver, the other stepping through spinifex. We found the usual things you find at a rest area: bottle caps, an old stubby, a lost thong turning brittle, a scrap of a map with a pen line through a town that doesn't have anywhere to stop. No people, no signs of a struggle or a sleep. A burrow sunk into the sand that a lizard had made. Ordinary, ordinary, ordinary. The less ordinary thing came when my radio clicked and then made a sound I know too well. My own voice, delayed, saying, "Police. 000." The sentence stumbled over itself and came back to me like it had gone around a corner and returned with dirt on it. I keyed my mic. "Comms, are you relaying any of our audio back?" "Negativa," comms said. "However, our operator is reporting she can hear your voice with a delay of approximately 90 seconds. She can also hear the phrase, 'hold for operator' on a loop. Telstra's night supervisor would like to know if you can confirm there is no physical handset present." "Confirmed," I said, looking at nothing and seeing a phone anyway. My torch pooled light around my boots like it had a mind to keep me standing still. Jacko wandered back toward the signboard and put his hand up to the plexi, as if that would help him read in the dark. "Hey," he called softly, "come have a look at this." He shone his torch at the part of the laminated map where someone had stuck a faded sticker years ago. A little rectangle saying, "Payphone here," with a phone pictogram. Under the sticker, puckered in the lamination, a photo of the very concrete pad we were standing at, small and bright. And smack in the middle of that tiny photo, the reflection of a man in the payphone glass, just a shape with a cap. It was nothing more than you'd expect on any brochure. It still made me feel watched in a polite, workmanlike way. We stood there listening to nothing. Then the ringtone inside the ground went again. 2 rings. Silence. The recorded voice. "Please hold." Then that older male voice, clearer. "Keep the line open, love. The crew will be back from Mitchell. In the Arvo. We'll get her sorted." It tilted the world 1 degree. I knew this kind of talk. Every roadhouse has someone. Every power outage out here is solved by a name. A bloke whose hands know which switch. It felt like we'd stepped into that voice as it traveled through a loop that had never been cut. We notified comms that we were clearing the immediate scrub. We left a triangle of tape at the entrance to the rest area. Not because we needed to, but because the action felt like a sentence we could finish. As I walked back to the car, a soft sound stepped on the air like a tiny insect. The coin returned kurr, chink. Impossible to mistake if you grew up around payphones. That little metal half-swallow, half-spit of a 20-cent piece hitting the tray. I looked at the concrete. The dust on the pad bore the round arc of a coin dragged by a fingertip. Nothing there. Just the mark and the urge in my own hand to bend and check for money that wasn't. 7-4, comms said, voice even. "We've got a second unit 2 towns over, but they're a long way. Telstra has woken their tech. He's advising that the last person to service that payphone retired in 2006. He's saying, look, don't quote me. He's saying they used to get calls stuck in the system after storms. He called them ghosts. His word, not mine. Do you require further?" "Negative further," I said. We'll do one more check, then clear. We took photos for the file bolt holes, the pit lid, the sign. On the lip of the lid, in the dust, there was a mark like someone had set down a heavy ring or a washer and lifted it again. If you want to, you can make meaning out of any circle in dust. If you don't want to, you can call it coincidence. We did both in our heads and neither in our mouths. Before we left, I did something that makes no sense in a report. I dialed the payphone number on my mobile. I had it because comms had read it off the CAD. It rang once. Then my phone went straight to dead air, the kind that isn't silence but a room tone. The recorded voice arrived like a memory. Please hold. Your call has been connected. Then, close enough to make me step back, that older male voice again. Warmer this time. Amused the way an uncle is when something does what it's supposed to. G'day, operator. Emu Creek phone. It didn't last. The line fell out from under me like someone had cut a rope that wasn't there. The screen said, call failed. Jacko raised his eyebrows, the same eyebrows he pulls when someone tells a story about a bara they nearly had. We both grinned without humor and let the grin go away. We cleared. 7-4 code 4, I told comms, baseline voice back in place. No persons located. Left area as found. Request Telstra. Check the pit at earliest convenience. Note in CAD that we have an audible anomaly. Copy 7-4, comms said. Professional right to the end. We'll attach your photos and notify Telstra. Thanks. Back at the station, a few hours later when the sky went from black to a gray that felt like the color of a cup, I asked comms for the audio clip. They sent it through with a note in the body. For your interest. I put it on in the report room while the kettle thought about boiling. You can hear the 000 call taker say their line the way they always do. Emergency. Police. Fire. Or ambulance. Silence. Then the faint chirp of what sounds like an old line tester. Then the recorded voice, too close to the mic. Please hold. Under that, a human voice, male, very gentle. Keep the line open, love. There's the sound of a coin dropping ridiculous. There's no other word for it. And then a breath that doesn't know it's being recorded. It's a sound you get from old mics when someone leans in. After that, my voice late to my own shift, saying, police, 000. And then the sound of wind across a microphone that wasn't there that night because there was no wind. Telstra sent their tech out after sunrise. He called me, because part of his job is curiosity and part of it is neatness. There's nothing there, he said, not triumphantly. No copper left. The pit's dry. The conduit stub under the pad goes nowhere. We took the lead, in back to the pillar. The pillar's empty on that pair. There's no battery to give anything a voice. He paused. But I stood there, and I'll swear to you I could hear a bloody phone ringing in my teeth. The municipality, who own the rest area sign, and the picnic table and the bin, didn't have anything to say. Why would they? The rest area had a phone, then it didn't. The sticker on the sign would get resurfaced someday. The ants would keep doing what they do regardless. About a week later, comms clipped 2 more open lines to the same file, because they were neat like that, both after midnight. Both with the same elements. In one, the call taker's prompt plays back to her with her own inflection but a minute off, like she had become the person she was answering. In the other, you can hear someone say, I'll sit tight, and a tiny soft tap, metal on metal, like a coin trying to be noticed. I don't have a grand lesson. You do this long enough, and you get used to the things that don't fit under the list of offenses. You learn that the systems we built to save us phones, radios, lights on highways, grow their own habits the way old houses do. They remember what they were told. A payphone sat there for 2 decades and did one job, connect you to the right voice, even if yours was shaking. If there's a bit of that left in the ground like heat in a road after sunset, I'm not the one who's going to argue. Nowadays, when we run that stretch at night, I find my hand wanting to check the coin tray out of old muscle memory as I pass the pad. There isn't one. There won't be again. But sometimes the radio will make a sound like a breath. The one it makes when a tower hands you to another tower in a valley. And it'll line up in my head with a voice that said, 3 times in one night, perfectly politely, please, hold. Your call has been connected. Story number 5. I'm Autobahnpolizei, Lower Saxony. Night shift on the A7 is its own kind of quiet, long ribbons of white lines, truck convoys like slow-moving apartment blocks, and the odd car with a single driver who has the face of someone trying not to blink. If you've worked it, you know the rhythm. Trucks keep right, overtakes happen like rehearsed moves, and the road hum becomes the background to everything. On a good night, you get time to think without thinking too much. It was early spring, just past 2. Dry, cool. A trace of fog in the hollows under the bridges, where the river sits close to the asphalt. We were running a loop between 2 junctions, checking for parked vehicles on the hard shoulder people who misjudge caffeine and the clock. Lightstell keyed up with that careful voice they get when the text on the screen makes them lean in. Fund 4 Dre, Lightstell. Open 110, from an Autobahn Notruffsäule emergency call pillar kilometer marker 192 northbound. No voice on the line. Faint tones in the background. Are you free to check? The call boxes used to be everywhere, orange pillars on the shoulder, 2 buttons, unfall or pan, accident or breakdown. Most are still there, some are gone. The mobile coverage made people lazy about them, but the old ones have their habits. I glanced at my partner Jörg, and he was already flicking the indicator like the road wants you to go where the call is. Fund 4 Dre, en route, I said. Any further on the audio? Lightstell came back. Operator reports a repeating announcement. Bitte bleiben Sie am Apparat. Sie werden verbunden. Please stay on the line. You will be connected. Then a single high tone every few seconds. No response to prompts. We attempted a call back, no connection. For your info, maintenance log notes that pillar at 192 was decommissioned last year. Line marked as inactive. I let that sit. Decommission doesn't always mean dead. Cables have memories longer than budgets. We came off at the previous exit, looped back, and took the hard shoulder at a crawl with our rear aero board lit. The kilometer posts ticked down. 190.5, 191, 191, 1.5. At 192, there's a lay-by with a bit of chain link fence, half-heartedly keeping the woods out. You can feel your tires change tone when you leave main asphalt for the coarse shoulder, like the road enters a different room. Leitstelle 543 on scene, Kilometer 192 NB, I said. We're stepping out. Night air on the Autobahn has its own temperature. It smells like brakes and damp grass, and the coldness that sits behind sound. We stood a moment to listen. Trucks rolled past, their bow wave pushing our jackets. Under that, very faint, something steady, a high beep, pause beep, and woven low through it, an automated woman, calm in a way that only tape is calm. Bitte bleiben Sie am Apparat. Sie werden verbunden. I swept the torch along the shoulder. Where the pillar should have been, there was a square of concrete, 4 rusted bolts, and a cut cable sealed with a plastic cap, tape over the join like a bandage. The orange post was gone. The space remembered it anyway. Jörg cocked his head. Hörst du das? You hear that? Ja, I said. It wasn't my radio. I turned the volume down just to prove it. The voice didn't change volume with the radio. It lived in the air, the way a line hum lives behind old speakers. Lightstell, I said. We have audible tones and a recorded announcement at location. No visible pillar. We'll check the verge. Verstanden, Control said. Technic says that section was switched to the new digital system 2 months ago. Old copper should be dead. They request we do not open any cabinets. If there's danger to life, act as necessary. Do you need another car? Negative, I said. The shoulder was wide, sightlines good. This wasn't a crowd problem. This was a detail problem. Up close, the concrete held tiny gravel that reflected light like fish scales. The cut cable had heat shrink on it, neatly done. I put my hand near it. No warmth. No hum. The beeping didn't come from it. It came from below the pitch of whatever my hands could feel. The announcement kept its patient loop. Bitte bleiben Sie am Apparat. Please stay on the line. Sie werden verbunden. You will be connected. Between repeats, the tone chirped like a heart monitor teaching itself to be brave. We walked the edge of the verge. The grass had little islands flattened in pairs, places drivers had stood when they stepped out to make a call in the days of pillars. The habits of people leave the same marks as the habits of systems. I called out like we always do. Paulize, 110. Ist jemand verletzt? Anyone injured? You don't expect an answer. You say it anyway. To satisfy the part of you that wants rules to work. Jörg pointed at a gray cabinet 10 meters down, set back from the shoulder on a concrete plinth, the kind with slatted vents and a triangular lock. Vorwall, he said. The local distribution for the roadside tech. There was a faint smell of warm dust near it, which could have been nothing, could have been everything. We didn't open it. We're not road tech. You don't stick your hands into a country's nerves unless you have to. We did the next best thing. Listened. The beep felt louder here, but that could have been our heads moving the sound around. Under it, like a layer you get if you tune a radio between stations. We both heard something that made the hairs on my arms decide they were still good at their job. A click like a handset lifted from a cradle, and a male voice, older, worn smooth by years of the same sentence, saying, Notrufstel, Kilometer 192? Hören Sie mich? Emergency point Kilometer 192. Do you hear me? He was not talking to us. He was talking in the place where the voice lives when it has a job. The announcement overlapped him, polite and persistent. The beep demarcated them like a metronome. A truck passed. The air moved. The voice did not. Lightstell, I said, flattening my tone out of habit. We're now hearing a male voice over the line at location. Sounds like a human operator from a pillar. He states the location, then asks if we can hear him. Can you confirm if any calls are being routed through the old system? Negative, Control said. Technic is adamant. Copper is cut at that site. No feed. Our call taker reports the same audio on their recording line. She also she's saying she can hear your voice, delayed by approximately 90 seconds. She can hear you call out police, anyone injured, with highway noise. That was a minute ago for you. I glanced at Jörg, and he gave me that face he saves for rookies, who ask him why a diesel sounds different on a cold morning. He shrugged, which I took as a kind of bravery. The announcement did its job. Bitte bleiben Sie am Apparat. The male voice without frustration. Notrufstel Kilometer 190. 2. Hören Sie mich? I moved to the edge of the lane, checked my angles, and crossed to the median barrier. Sometimes sound travels differently across the center. In the gap between the lanes, the world sounded inside-out trucks on both sides, a wind that went nowhere. The beep followed me like a polite dog. On the median side, there was another cabinet, same keyway, same vents. A moth tapped the metal once, twice, as if to prove to me that some sounds have explanations. Our radio hissed with the little salt and pepper of bad reception. Through it, like a voice coming upstairs, I heard my own call sign. Not Control. Not the right discipline. A slower version of me, like I'd been recorded on an old tape. 5 4 Off. Scene. On scene. That was minutes ago. The radio didn't claim it. It let the hiss take it again in a small gulp. Jörg raised an eyebrow. He doesn't spook easy. He has children who wake in the night for water with outstretched hands and say things the dark puts in their mouths. He tapped his ear and cocked his head the way a dog does to parse a sentence it wants to understand. The announcement changed for one loop, the only time it did. Bitte bleiben Sie am Apparat. Ein Mitarbeiter meldet sich gleich. Please, stay on the line. An operator will be with you shortly. The male voice followed it, almost on top of it. Bleiben Sie wo Sie sind, we're Sie in Ihr Fahrzeug. Stay where you are. We can see your vehicle. I turned a half step without meaning to, as if someone had addressed me in a shop. There was nothing to see but trucks, reflective stripes, the rhythm of a modern country moving all its goods while most of the people slept. Lightstell, I said, just for my report later. Can you confirm the era of those announcements? Are we dealing with archive audio from the old system? Technic says the phrasing matches older Deutsche Telekom Notruf. Yes, Control said. Those phrases were phased out years ago. The new digital network uses a different prompt set. Listen, do you need a road service crew? Negative, I said, because what would I tell them to fix? There was no pillar to set upright. There was a line that wanted to be a line. We did what we could control. We walked the area in a tight grid with the torch. The shoulder had the usual debris bit of tire, a torn strap, a wrapper from a sandwich that was probably eaten all at once at that exact spot under the same sodium lights. No footprints fresher than ours in the sandy dirt by the cut cable. No broken fence where someone might have stepped into the woods to hide. The verge was plain grass, and a few cigarette ends mashed into a little dark circle by boots like mine. I knelt by the concrete base. Rust traced the bolt holes like drawn-on eyebrows. For a moment, a dumb, childlike moment, I reached toward the place where the call button would have been on the pillar if it had been there. My hand hovered over air that used to have a job. The beep did its little patient duty. The voice did his. Natrafstel kilometer 192, Hurin Zemich? And just after that, way back like the end of a corridor, a second male voice, different, younger, laughing the way people laugh when they are not as afraid as they are. Then the laugh cut and there was only the announcement again, courteous, never annoyed. Was this deine theory? Jörg said, half smiling. What's your theory? I don't have one I like, I said. Cables cross. Old lines carry ghosts of voltage. Tapes get stuck in loops. Take your pick. He nodded like he would if we were looking at a weather map with shapes in it. Ich hasse diese Tonbandfrauen, he said lightly. I hate those tape women. It's a joke we all make the way an automatic voice can feel like someone standing very close, very patient, not quite listening. We logged what we could. I asked Lightstel to attach our audio when it came in. We made a note to send Technic out when it was daylight, because technicians are braver in daylight like we are. Before we left, because I am capable of doing something I know is foolish, I stood on the concrete base of the old pillar and said as if the box were present, Polizei, wir sind vor Ort. Wenn Sie Hilfe brauchen, sprechen Sie jetzt. Police, we're on scene. If you need help, speak now. The beeping stopped. The announcement paused, like something deciding whether to let a person speak. And then, with the kind of clarity that removes any excuse for pretending it's wind, the male voice said not to me, not to us, Bleiben Sie am Apparat. Stay on the line. We're stirrend den Abschleppwagen. We'll dispatch the tow truck. We waited. No tow truck arrived, of course. Trucks kept being trucks. A car with a foreign plate swam through. Tires singing where the asphalt joins had a rhythm. The beep returned to its post. The announcement returned to hers. We cleared the scene because you have to. The highway rewards decisiveness. Lightstel, 5-4-3, area calm. No persons located. Audible anomaly at KM 192. Please notify Technic. The tape of those words is somewhere on a server with 1,000 others that mean nothing to anyone but the people who drive past those numbers every day. In the morning, after we had gone home and tried to convince our bodies that a sun through curtains is an acceptable time to sleep, Technic sent their report to Control, and Control clipped it to our occurrence. It had pictures of the base with a ruler and shot, the sealed cable with a date stamp. It had a note. No voltage present. No connection to node. Cabinet shows no active relays. Old copper cut back to main trunk. Residual EM hum within normal values. Then, a line written by someone who was honest enough to reflect the world. Technica reports faint ring in ear when standing at base subjective. Lightstel also added the 110 audio. I listened to it in the Dienst group room. Coffee too hot in a paper cup. Sunrise making the lockers shine like they had feelings. The recording starts with our call taker's prompts. 110. What is your emergency? Then the announcement, crisp like it's sitting in the same room. Bitte bleiben Sie am Apparat. Sie werden verbunden. The beep in between like a metronome. And then me, late to my own recording, saying, Police. Anyone injured? The highway is in the background like an ocean. 2 days later, same time of night, Control got another open 110 from the same dead pillar. We were somewhere else, minor crash with a fox and a bumper, and another crew went. They reported the same. The pillar wasn't there. The voice was. The beep was. The announcement did her job. And the second crew had a thing we didn't. On their radio, They heard the soft click of a relay in time with their hearts. They described it like that because they were tired and honest. Control marked the occurrence. Unfounded, no person found, because you have to choose a box. You could argue a dozen mundane explanations if you want them. Capacitive coupling on a cut line. Audio from a roadside cabinet picked up by the call taker's headset through some glitch in the recorder. A man's voice from a nearby truck's CB landing on our frequency for a breath. All of that might be true. I've seen weirder with digital systems and weather. It still doesn't change the feeling of standing over 4 bolts that once held a thing whose job was to connect any stranger to help, and hearing that job done again, perfectly, to nobody. Autobahns are built on patterns. You learn the sound of a truck going slightly wrong 3 lanes away. You hear when a tire has a flat spot. You can tell the hour by the kind of car that goes past without looking up. That night added another pattern to my head. Sometimes when we run that stretch and the fog lays in the underpasses like sleep, my radio will give a little hiss for no good reason. Over it, almost imaginably, the patience of a recorded voice. Bitte bleiben Sie im Apparat. And below it, a man who has said his sentence 1,000 times, to the living, and maybe now, to no one at all. Notrufstel kilometer 192. Hören Sie mich? Story number 6. I'm assigned to a koban, a small police box in a coastal town in Miyagi Prefecture. Our nights are mostly quiet. Long stretches of road along rice fields, an unmanned train station, and the sea working on the breakwater like it has all the time in the world. We keep the routine small and exact. You check the shuttered shops. You talk to the convenience store clerk on his break. You keep an ear on the radio and a hand on the thermos. Just after 1, comms came up in my earpiece. Unit 3, 1, open 110 from a landline. Annie returns to Kamiyashiro Station public phone. Caller silent. The call taker reports faint chimes in the background. Possible station announcement. No response to callback. Are you available? Kamiyashiro Station is a sleepy flag stop on a single-track line. No staff after 6. No vending machines. The only sound that late is the ocean and the wind in the old cedars. I thought about the payphone they were referencing, the green NTT unit in the waiting room. I'd used it before to call my own mobile during a reception test. It had been removed earlier that year, the metal base plate left behind with 4 bolts, and a stain where the plastic had protected the wood from Sunday. 3, 1, en route, I said. Any further on the audio? Comms hesitated the way they do when they're reading a second monitor. The call taker reports a repeating phrase. Please stand behind the yellow line. Female voice, recorded. Under it, a single high ding, dong chime every 30 seconds. Then silence. We're unable to ring it back. Railway emergency number is being notified. Copy, I said. I saw my own breath puff in the patrol car and slid the heater up 1 notch. The road out to Kamiyashiro is 2 lanes through flat land, and then 1 last curve along a seawall that holds back the night as much as it holds back the tide. The stars were visible in slices between bands of cloud. The crossing at the station was dark. Arms up, bells mute. 3, 1 on scene, I told comms, parking by the bicycle racks. No other vehicles. Station appears unlit. The waiting room is a glass box with sliding doors, a few benches, posters about festivals that happened months ago and will happen again. My torch showed what I expected. Empty, neat, a forgotten umbrella in the corner, leaning like it felt guilty about it. And from inside, faint enough to make your head tilt, the sound comms had warned me about. Ding, dong. Then the clean, recorded voice you hear all over the country. Please stand behind the yellow line. It should be noted, the speakers in unmanned stations aren't on at night. They don't play anything but the first train's chime at dawn, and then only if the timer wakes them. And that payphone, the green one, had been gone for months. Comms, I said, keeping my voice even. I have audible chime and announcement from inside. No sign of forced entry. I'm going to check the interior. The sliding door moved with the slow approval old doors give. The air inside was colder than outside and smelled faintly like dust warmed by sun in the day, now cooled. The yellow line on the platform outside ran its neat line of dots to the end of the concrete and then disappeared into shadow. The chime came again, very polite, like it had been told to keep people safe and that was its job. Please stand behind the yellow line. There was no power. The fluorescent tubes overhead were gray, and the ticket machine, a simple fare chart, and an honesty box sat juvenile and square, with the little window shut. I went to the corner where the payphone had been. The metal base plate was still there, 4 bolts catching my torch. The surface around it was bleached from sun. A rectangular ghost marked where the phone had once shielded the wood. As I stood there, the ring of a payphone chimed from nowhere, not a mobile trill. A true mechanical ring, softened by walls as if it came from behind me at shoulder height. My hand did that thing hands do where they reach toward what they expect. There was nothing to touch. Just air that had a job once. 3, 1. Do you require backup? Comms asked softly. There's a cadence the call takers use, when the strange outweighs the expected. I heard it, and felt a little less stubborn about my own steadiness. Negative, I said after a beat. I'll do a sweep and then wait for Junior. Do we have contact? Railway Control advises no active service through Kamishiro until first train at 5:08. They say all speakers and signs are on timed power. They're sending a maintenance agent from the depot, ETA 30 minutes. The chime sounded again. The voice followed it. Please stand behind the yellow line. I could have told you exactly which woman in Tokyo recorded those words in a bright room years ago. It's the same voice that tells you to mind the doors in buildings 3 hours away. It is so familiar you trust it without thinking, until you are standing in a glass box in a town where the only thing bigger than the sea is the dark. I pushed the platform door and stepped out. The rails hummed slightly in the night because rails always hum if there is any wind to take the sound along them. The cab light on the signal 200 meters down was dead. No indicator boards. No power anywhere. But from the ceiling speaker above me, coated in dust the way the seaside coats everything, the voice spoke again too clear for a dead speaker. Please stand behind the yellow line. Police, I called out in Japanese, in the formal tone that travels well through thin air. If you called 110, make yourself known. It's safe to come here. I didn't expect an answer. I got one, or something like it. From the speaker, softly, an older male voice, like a station master of the old kind, who would wave a flag because he loved the ritual. Might kudasai, he said. Look, please. His tone carried the gentle authority of a man who asks instead of orders because he knows you'll comply. Might, he repeated. I felt myself turn rather than decided to. He wasn't pointing me, but the voice had that weight like a finger. I swept the light at the end of the platform, where the yellow line leads to a fence, with a locked gate. There was nothing there. Then my beam caught something in the gravel on the rail bed, a small, unreadable rectangle the size of a ramen shop matchbox. I stepped closer along the lawful part of the platform and leaned my light. It was a train ticket, the old kind with a punch hole, half buried in ballast, dated 10 years earlier. Kami-Ishiro, to Ishi. Fare, 190 yen. You could explain it easily. Wind, habit, a ticket dropped and pressed flat by time. But the part of me that keeps track of the unsaid felt the way you feel when a stranger politely makes sure you notice your glove left on a chair. Comms, I said, just noting detail for later. I have an old ticket on the track bed near the gate. No recent footprints, no sign of anyone injured. The chime persists. Copy, Comms said. And I could hear her breathing the way you do when the room around your headset suddenly matters to you. The payphone rang again. By then, my sense of reality had adapted. I stopped looking for a phone. I listened to the possibility of one. The ring was followed by a subtle shift in the air of the waiting room, like sound had walked in. Then the automation again, this time overlapped with something like my own voice, police, played back at a delay, like we were both learning to speak. I keyed up. Comms, are you hearing my audio through the 110 line? Affirmative, she said quietly. We're getting your voice with a delay approximately 2 minutes. We can also hear the station chime. For your situational, call taker reports an additional phrase, local train now arriving in Japanese. There are no trains on the schedule. The hairs on my arms did something old. I went to the edge of the platform and stood behind the yellow line because a person can only be so brave against habits ingrained by childhood and repetition. My light swept the track to either direction. The sea, unseen, made its constant private conversation. The cedars held the wind. Then I felt it. Dangerous because it wasn't real. That vibration in your heels, you get a second before a train rounds a curve. Nothing moved. My beam showed rails like lines drawn onto the night. But the old me, the one that took trains to school, stepped back a half step anyway. In the speaker, the chime chimed. The woman said what she always says, "Please stand behind the yellow line." And in Japanese, after a pause, "Local train now arriving." The arriving train did not arrive. The platform stayed empty with the specific emptiness of very late or very early. My radio gave a papery hiss like tired paper sliding in a drawer. And then, through it, my own earlier call sign came back to me, not from comms, as if the night had become a looped recording studio. 3, 1 on scene. That was 5 minutes ago. I stood so still I became my own statue. 3, 1. Comms said, sounding as human as I have ever heard a recorded system allow. Jar is 5 minutes out. They're asking, "Do you have eyes on any unofficial access to the tracks? A fence breach? Anyone there with you?" "Negative on access," I said, scanning the fence and the ends of the platform like I could will integrity into chain link. "And negative on persons. It's me and a voice that knows the announcements." A car pulled in then with a sensible headlight and a sensible speed. A man got out in a JR jacket, a torch in his hand that looked like mine, and a posture that said he had been woken and was doing his best not to show irritation. "Sumimasen," he said, bowing at 90% strength. "Maintenance? You called?" His eyes flicked to the speaker when it chimed. We stood together in that thin, polite air people find in Japan when they're sharing something odd, and no one wants to push too hard on an explanation. He unlocked a panel by the door and checked a breaker box that looked like a ration book. He checked a circuit tester that stayed mute like a sleeping insect. "No power," he said, tapping the meter. He wrapped a knuckle under the speaker cover, and it left a dust print on his glove. "No power," he said again, more to himself than to me. The chime chimed. The voice said her line. He blinked at the speaker the way I had. "The timer is set for morning," he said, holding his phone up like it might offer a second opinion. "It cannot do this." He was a professional, and lived in a world of parts that either worked or didn't. I appreciated that. He went outside with me, and we looked down the track with identical beams. He shook the fence at the end gate. He cleared his throat and said, to the waiting room speaker as if it were a person, "Dame Disu yo." Not allowed. He smiled at me because how else do you stand there? Back inside, the payphone rang again, and my head and his turned at the same time like a pair of old dogs hearing a familiar footstep. The ring ended in a click like a receiver set down gently. A man's voice, warm, patient, followed. "Kami Shiro, Ichiban Sen. Platform 1. Local now arriving." Then, quieter, as if he were leaning toward a microphone that had seen a lot and wasn't easily impressed. "Please stand behind the yellow line." The JR man looked at me, and then went to the ticket window and pushed the little curtain aside. The office was a square, too small to be a room. On the desk, under dust that remembered hands, lay a ledger. He opened it because he was that kind of man, and because he wanted the ledger to tell him he was not insane. The entries were neat from years ago. Times, train numbers, delays in tiny, careful characters. He flipped toward the back and saw an index card tucked between pages. It was more recent than the rest. Written by someone who had borrowed the ledger to make their own mark. "Please stand behind the yellow line," written in blue pen like a practice sentence. Under it, in a different hand, in pencil and fainter. "When quiet, turn off." He looked at me. "I didn't write that," he said, defensive against a charge I had not even thought to make. "No one uses this," he added. He felt strange saying it in a room that was using itself. The speaker chimed again, and then went silent. My radio hissed, and then took a breath, and then played me to myself, 5 minutes late. "Police, if you called 110, make yourself known." My recorded self sounded tired and more formal than I feel. It's always disorienting to hear yourself like that. He heard it too, eyes narrowing. We tested everything possible, breaker, timer, lines. The maintenance man called his supervisor, while still half bowing toward me because manners run even when the rails don't. The supervisor said the thing technical supervisors always say, "Impossible." He said it twice, once for each of us, and both in that soft tone that suggests the word doesn't help. We left a note on the door for the morning team because there's comfort in paperwork even when it doesn't hold the thing you need it to. We wrote that we had responded to a 110 open line, that announcements had been heard from a speaker with no power, that no persons had been located. We initialed the bottom like men who trust symbols to keep them honest. We stepped back out to the bikes and the cedar shadows. At the car, as I keyed up to clear, the crossing bells across the road rang once. One clean ka-ching, as if someone had hit them with a finger and then walked away. The arms did not move. The signal stayed dark. The JR man and I looked at each other and each did the same. Small shrug that says it is late and we can't stand here naming every piece of air. 3, 1, area secure, no persons. GR maintenance on scene, I said into the microphone. Leave a note for morning shift, comms replied, and I could hear the relief of a box ticked in her voice. We'll attach the audio. I listened to that audio later, at the Koban desk with the thermos empty and the sky thinking out loud about morning. The 110 recording had the usual room tone of a call center headsets, a printer sighing, a chair wheel doing one slow roll. You hear the call taker do her thing. 110, what is your emergency? Silence. Then the chime, as restrained as a bow. Then the phrase, in Japanese, please stand behind the yellow line. Then my voice, like I am a stranger to myself, speaking Japanese to a room where no one is. After that, there is a moment of nothing. Then you can hear a man say something so gently, it makes the hairs on your arms remember their work. Look please, he says, might kudasai. And then, as if in deference to everyone, a very quiet, when it is quiet, turn off. Rail took it seriously enough to send out a team in daylight. They wrote a report with photos of a breaker box and a speaker cover on a bench like a seashell. They tested the line to the timer. They tested the emergency announcement system that triggers in earthquakes. They found no faults. No abnormal conditions detected, the report said. The phrase looks neat in any language. It means what we want it to mean until it doesn't. Afterwards, nights went back to their two modes, busy suddenly or slow indefinitely. The station sat the way stations do between relevance and sleep. I would pass and glance the way you do when you want to be rational, and the world suggests other options. Once, a month later, we had another 110 from the same station at 2:10. The same chime. Voice. The call taker said she heard herself give the prompt back to herself, 4 minutes late, with the same breath in the middle of a phrase. JR's report said everything was fine that night too. The maintenance man brought a small gift to the Koban a week after sweet bean buns because Japanese people apologize for things they didn't do, and because he'd stood in a quiet place with me and listened for moving parts in a universe that was not moving the way it said it would. I think about that night when I'm telling rookies to use their torch and to take the extra minute at a scene to let silence tell them what it will. Systems don't forget easily. We build them to be habits with speakers. The station's only job was to say, in polite, careful language, where to stand and when to go. It's a good job. It keeps people alive. If that instruction outlives its wires, I don't know what to call it except faithful. I don't pretend haunted. I have enough words that don't ask me to change uniforms for folklore. But I also know the familiarity of a chime in a room with no power can tug at your gut the way a voice that sounds like your own can tug you into listening when listening doesn't make sense. The yellow line at Kamiishiro runs straight until it meets the dark. You stand behind it because a voice told you to, or because your feet remember. You wait for a train that doesn't come, and then you go back to your car, and you write the report. And hours later, the ocean still sounds like it's talking about something you almost understood.